Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Hangout on Air with Dr. Chris Kraft. While we're talking about assessment. So I'm so glad that all of you teacher leaders or other people are joining us. If you guys have any questions at all, you can go ahead and put your questions in the chat at the bottom of the YouTube live event, or you can tweet them out using the EdTechTeam online hashtag, and we can go ahead and answer those questions for you guys. So to start, our guest today is Dr. Chris Kraft, and he is with the EdTechTeam. I'll let him do a quick intro of himself quick first.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, I'm Chris Kraft. I live, work, and play in Columbia, South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. Excited to be hanging out with you all today. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for EdTechTeam. Was a classroom teacher for 12 years. I started out teaching Spanish and Latin. And ended up teaching a class called Introduction to STEM. My school was an entirely 6th grade school with just over 1,000 kids. So I was fortunate to work with some amazing kids, some fantastic faculty, and a really great administration.
Awesome, thank you. So we are in our assessment unit right now for the teacher leader cohort, and people have been playing around with a lot of different assessment tools, really thinking about assessment in the classroom and what kind of tools we can use that will make assessment easier for us, better for our students. And you happen to have created a very cool extension called CheckMark. And so we're here today to talk about that extension and think about how we can use it in our classrooms and what difference it will make in our classrooms. To start, can you just tell us what CheckMark is?
CheckMark is designed to help the teacher give feedback on student writing or on any type of student work in Google Docs. So you highlight a word, you get a very quick overlay, which you can very quickly and very easily select from among predetermined letter codes, which will insert a comment for you on the right-hand side related to that particular section or highlighted word.
Fantastic. So thinking about assessment and making that assessment feedback more meaningful and a lot easier for you as the teacher. How did you come up with CheckMark? Why would you create something like this?
Yeah, I didn't come up with it, which is what's so exciting about it. Is over the summer, I was at one of our EdTechTeam summits in the upstate of South Carolina. And I was talking to a teacher, and she said to me very frankly and very honestly that when it comes down to it, in her situation, it was easier for her to do grading on paper. So she almost was sheepish in telling me this because there's such a push towards technology. But she said, look, the reality is that as kids are turning in their work, I can grab my red pen, and I went, whoa, I can grab my red pen, I can write on it, I can flip it over. There's no waiting for anything to load. And the reality is that I couldn't find fault with her argument. So I began to ask questions. How can we help make that process better and more efficient? Because the reality is that I can remember my mom was a teacher. 35 plus years she was in the classroom. And I can remember when I was a kid, one of the worst things was having to watch her grade papers after supper. And I thought, man, wouldn't she be able to, wouldn't it be awesome if she could just hang out with us? So my goal became, how do we create something that can make the grading and assessment process or the marking process more efficient and faster than it currently is? So enter CheckMark.
Fantastic. I was a 4th and 6th grade teacher, so I did a lot of that within the Google Docs as well, and taking the papers home or adding the comments. And even though I loved adding the comments through a Google Doc, it did sometimes take a while to add those comments. So I was wondering, Chris, if you could maybe demo this for us.
I'd love to.
What that looks like and people can understand what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I'd be delighted to. Give me just a second to set that up. So Tracy, if you just confirm for me that you can see my Google Doc with some lorem ipsum text in front of me.
I can.
Great. So the way CheckMark works is once you install it, you enable it. So you'll notice the icon is right here and it's green. So I've already done both of those steps. And now when I double click on this particular word, here is my overlay. So this particular overlay at the top relates to grammatical feedback. For example, let's say that this interim word should be capitalized. I hit the C, and then instantly I get a comment off to the right that says check capitalization. So then let's say over here, that should be just purely for an example, that's a comma splice. And then over here, we might say that's a subject-verb agreement. So what we're asking students to do, of course, is check that. Now note that each one of these badges has a 1 next to it. And watch what happens. So down here, let's use subject-verb again. And you'll notice what happens is it counts the number of times that any particular overlay portion is utilized. The reason behind that is it lets you and I as classroom educators more rapidly determine and more effectively determine areas where students need help. So for example, in this instance, let's say we had a third one down here. Here's another subject-verb agreement. I could say to my student, look, I've identified 3 subject-verb agreement issues. You need to read through, fix them because I've adjusted, I've shown you where they are, and then you need to read the rest of your paper through the lens of now better understanding subject-verb agreement. It gives an opportunity for remediation. The bottom section are related to content-based feedback. So for example, this one may need a degree of clarification, or this one needs more discussion, or this one needs spacing, or over here we need a citation, and so on. So again, you can see the goal of CheckMark is to prevent that long process of selecting, going over here to add the comment, and having to type out the comment. We've taken, we interviewed dozens of classroom educators from a variety of different subject areas, predominantly ELA, and we had a conversation about, hey, what does it look like to what would you like to see in that? And that results in CheckMark.
I love, love, love that you can see how many errors of the same kind of errors that students are having, and that they can see that too, instead of having to go back and count or tally, or you have to, find all of those mistakes and count them up. That's a great feature. We have somebody watching right now too who said that they're so excited to share this with their English teachers. It just seems like a really great extension. Crafty, I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit more about why you think this will make a difference.
The goal is to make just a little bit of backstory. So the state of South Carolina, where I live, moved to Common Core, and then they decided to move away from Common Core. But one of the pieces that they kept, particularly in the middle levels grades, was this idea of iterative feedback. So the goal was that as classroom educators, no matter the content area, we need to get kids writing, number 1, reading first, writing 2, as more like an A-B, not a sequential ordering. And then not only do we need to get them writing, but we need to give them more effective and more regular feedback. So couple that with an increase in the push towards Google Classroom. It's only been out for a few years now. So more teachers are using Google Docs, more teachers are using Google Classroom, and more teachers are spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to most effectively give feedback. So I've seen and talked to people at conferences that they're doing screencasts to create, to give feedback, which is a longer process. But especially in early iterations of writing, we've got to be focused on exactly what's inside CheckMark, or at least that's what teachers are telling me, that in early iterations, we've got to be looking at grammar and content, top row and bottom row. And we've got to be able to very quickly, very easily give feedback to these kids so that we're not spending all of our time. And since CheckMark just leverages the normal Google Docs comment feature, any teacher can go back and see the comments that were left and then resolved. The kids can respond to each comment to say, I've fixed this, or whatever routine is developed as a part of the classroom. And they can say, hey, I've taken care of this by resolving those comments. Then the teacher can use either the version history to see exactly what's been changed as a result, or they can go back and look at the comments. However the teacher decides to do that is completely up to him or her. But hopefully, the fingers crossed, and I'd love to hear some feedback about this from the folks that are in the cohort and the group. Hopefully, this will make the process of giving feedback better. CheckMark has existed for exactly 1 month today, 1 month, and has more than 21,000 users so far. So the response has been encouraging, and I hope it's beneficial for your group.
I think it definitely will be. And it goes back to, I know that there have been other things like the monkey checker with the Jozu app, but that never used just Google. It was always adding another extension or going into another page. And this just uses the regular Google Docs comments and right there in your revision history and everything, which is great. So we have a couple questions just about within CheckMark, can you go in and either add additional information to a comment, or what if you have your own specific comment that you like to add? Can you do that?
Not yet. And I say that intentionally, not yet, because I am not at liberty to share, but there may or may not be something that hopefully, assuming that we get some bugs ironed out coming out shortly after the first of the year, that may or may not address that.
Awesome. So a little sneak peek. We will hope that to see some feature updates coming up soon. Chris, is there anything else that you want to share with us about CheckMark?
So CheckMark is really exciting. And in fact, we here at EdTechTeam are taking this product development idea very, very seriously. And we've got a few other things up our sleeve, and I'd love to share something new with you. But before I do, I'd also love to say that as you're engaging with us through our EdTechTeam blog and through our Facebook, keep an eye out, because very soon there's going to be an opportunity for you to engage specifically with some of the new products that we're developing. Particularly if you're a teacher or leader, we'd love to hear feedback from you. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And we're going to be starting up sometime in December, maybe early to mid-January. We're going to be starting up a group of trusted testers that we're going to be looking for some folks to get early access to what we're working on. It's going to be a focus group to start with. Hey, are these good ideas that people are giving? Should we move forward with them? It's going to be that type of an opportunity, number one. And then number two, as we're developing some new things that we would love to have some folks to beta or alpha. And then as Molly would say, we're living in beta. So we'd love to have some folks that would beta test for us. But that said,
for that, Chris, this is a great group of teachers for that. So
well, I hope that a lot of these folks will participate in that, because we need some. I need some very brutal feedback on what we're working on. But speaking of which, we've got something brand new that's just coming out today. So you friends are some of the first ones to even hear about that. It's called Whisper by EdTechTeam. And Whisper does this. You know, the reality is, as we went one-to-one in our 6th grade classroom across our entire school, and actually across the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, instruction changed for us. My buddy Brian Crosby in Nevada used to say, his blog was called Learning is Messy. And it was this idea of pushing against the conformity of learning, where everybody's quiet and they're working on the same worksheet. It's this idea that, you know, sometimes learning is messy and it's a little loud and it looks a little different. Well, that became a challenge for me, not from a disciplinary standpoint, but rather from a logistical one, because the reality is, when there's 10 minutes left in class and I have probably on me forgotten to give out field trip permission slips, or I need to announce something to the class, the challenge for me became, what do I do? So I went the Harry Wong method, first days of school, and I would do the countdown from 5, 4, everybody give me 5, or listen, this is confession time, don't judge me, but I would do the clap once if you can hear me, clap twice. I'm so sorry for having done that to every student ever in my history. I apologize. But the reality is, when I would forcibly capture my students' attention when they were working, that's a cognitive hit. So the reality is, if you and I have a very limited working memory, and I have to ask you or my students to stop attending to the task they're attending to, they're in that flow, they're getting work done, and they've got to cognitively ramp down to attend to what I'm talking about, they've got to process what I'm talking about, then I say, all right, go back to work. It's not quite that easy, because then they have to ramp back up cognitively as a part of all of that. So there's got to be a better way. I think Whisper is that better way. The way it works is this. You install Whisper and you click I'm a teacher. You authenticate to Google Classroom, which lets Whisper pull in all of your classes and students from Google Classroom. So setup takes 30 seconds at best. So it pulls all your information in, and then you open up Whisper, and then you can message your entire class. The students have to have the extension too. They install it, click I'm a student. You can message your entire class with a couple of clicks. You choose your class, you type your message, and then every student gets a browser notification. The same way they get the rest of them, they get a browser notification with your message. But it gets better. Let's say that you want to message that one kid that's over in the corner that you feel like maybe struggling, but you don't want to call that child out all the way to your desk, and it's inefficient for you to go all the way over there because that feels like you're hovering or it feels uncomfortable for that child. You can very discreetly say, hey, I'd love to help you if you're in need of it, or, you know, wake up, you're probably not paying. Maybe that was just in my classroom that I had kids that. So you can message one student, or you can message a number of them, or all of them all at once. Now the question gets asked, what happens if my kids aren't on their Chromebooks, computers, or whatever right then? No problem. There are two things that happen. Number one, every time you send a Whisper message, it also goes to the recipient as an email. So that way there's an email in their inbox. That way they get it as a notification plus an email. Plus you get an email. But because you don't want to clog up your email, I make sure that that's marked as read and that's archived. So it stays out of your inbox, doesn't clog yours up because you know what you said. But also the messages reside in the Whisper extension. So students, if they miss one, there'll be a little 1 or 2 or 3 unread badge. They can go check it from the extension. Or again, they'll see the email or otherwise. Very quick, very easy, very efficient messaging. It's one way from teachers to students. You don't have to worry about them blowing you up. It's not another inbox for you. It's an opportunity for you to message your kids quickly, easily, efficiently. Setup's a breeze. WhisperClass.com. Totally free. CheckMark is free too.
Chris, I feel like we got a bonus today. The fact that we got to have a hangout with you today on the day that it's released and everything. So that's super fun to hear about that. And that also will really be a very, very helpful extension for teachers. You're just going to make our lives easier 1 month at a time, right?
That's the goal. There are a couple more that are on the horizon. I can't share them with you yet, but I can tell you that a couple of them are solving direct problems that teachers have been asking for. If you used to use Smart Notebook years ago, and there's some features that you wish you had now, you are going to love what's coming up next. If you've been using PowerPoint and you wish there were a couple of features in slides, you're going to love what's coming up next. So keep an eye on the EdTechTeam Facebook, keep an eye on the EdTechTeam blog for what's coming up soon.
Awesome. Well, Chris, we're so glad that you could join us today, and I hope you don't mind if people tweet out additional questions that they might have. And I really hope that we have some teacher leaders that can join you in your alpha and beta testing coming up soon in the new year.
I would love that. I'll be keeping an eye on the EdTechTeam online hashtag, and if you want to hit me directly on Twitter, I'm at Crafty184.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dr. Chris Kraft. It was so great to have you, and we are excited to use these new extensions.
Thanks, Tracy, and thanks, teacher leaders. So excited to have you as a part of the program, and if I can serve you in any way, you let me know.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be in touch soon.